everybody, this is Carl back again for another TV show spoiler review. And today I'm covering X-Men Evolution Season 1. Already wrapped up the 5 seasons of the 90s X-Men, which you can find on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkativecarl. Links in the description below. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out all the various content I have, especially the more recent stuff like all my X-Men coverage, which I'm getting a lot of hits on and feedback from, as well as my current video game walkthroughs that have been posted from my Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/talkativecarl, which you can also follow me on if you want to chat with me live whenever I'm live. Also, I want to let you guys know you can send in your questions to me via my Twitter handle at talkativecarl, or through my YouTube channel if you want to ask certain questions that I'll be answering via by next month for my Hot Ones Challenge video that I'll be doing. Anyway. Oh, and by the way, I will be doing like a new video game walkthrough of Final Fantasy 16 starting Friday evening Central Time. I'm still going through Street Fighter 6 World Tour stuff, and I'm still playing through Destiny 2 Lightfall stuff. So but anyway, yeah, X-Men Evolution. This is definitely like a good, if you want a good understanding about what like the early 2000s was like, X-Men Evolution is really kind of, it's like a good time capsule for that. Because yeah, I mean, I would say I was like in my early teens when X-Men Evolution came out. It was like yeah, it was like the year 2000. It was like it first aired November 4th of the year 2000. So yeah, it was it was like a dope. It was like at least a handful of years in between the ending of the 90s X-Men and the start of this. And as a decent, like, you know, update, and every time you do a new X-Men TV show, they have to kind of like repurpose it to fit like whatever current era they're in, like a soft reboot in a way. And in the 90s X-Men theme song still is like the best, but X-Men Evolution in a way has its own unique take on it, very retro take on the X-Men theme song. It's still pretty good. It's very hummable, you can say that. But we're in upstate New York. Most of the X-Men are in high school, going to like Bayville High. Of course, we got, you know, because throughout season 1 we'll be recruiting a certain few members along the way. But from the start, we got the, you know, the core members that are teens: Jean Grey, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, and you know, those like the original, you know, team before they start recruiting a little bit more people. The teachers here, and this, unlike this kind of leg up on the 90s X-Men, because one of my criticisms for that TV show is like a fair criticism, is that, you know, you got these big roster of X-Men supposedly running a school for gifted youngsters, but there's no other children running around with X genes that need to be in this school. Sure, like the X-Men or like the first line of defense in order to deal with evil mutants or potential danger to mutant kind or just threats to humanity as a whole, and they're not that too dissimilar to what the Fantastic Four does, even though the Fantastic Four are more like explorers, but they help out when they can, and it doesn't really have to coincide with what they're doing. Similar to like the X-Men. But along the way, they start recruiting Kitty Pryde, this Rogue, but Rogue goes through a certain arc, and this is people's second favorite interpretation of Rogue, right behind the 90s TV show version. But we also get this character called Spike, who is because in the 90s TV show, Storm has this kind of surrogate son that living in Africa. Really didn't really stick with me like that. But Spike in this interpretation is the her nephew, the son of her sister, and her sister's husband living in New York. That's that interpretation. I think Spike here, people really gravitated to Spike, and he's an awesome character. It's a shame that it's like, because Spike has he's like, his powers is not like that dissimilar to like Marrow, who was like part of the Morlocks in Marvel Comics. He's able to he has like bone protrusions. He's able to produce spikes and like armor eventually, a shield. And it's a cool moment where like the episode after he was introduced into the X-Men, he see him drinking a whole bunch of milk, because I guess producing all these kind of spikes will leave you wanting more to feed the marrow in your bones, I guess, because bones like milk makes the bones stronger. Calcium. Yeah, because Spike never really was like officially brought into like the mainline comics. I think one of the supposed interpretations of Spike in live action, if you remember X3, that guy with like the things coming out of his forearms that was throwing like these spike bone things at Wolverine in the forest, I guess you can think that is Spike in a way, but there is a Spike, but Spike that we know from X-Men Evolution has spells the name with a Y, but in the comics they kind of repurpose it to be an I, and of course if you've seen him in the comics, it's kind of repurposed. He doesn't have the same backstory as we've seen in the TV show. So yeah, he produced spikes from his body, but in the TV show, he has bone manipulation. He can project short spikes through his skin from virtually anywhere in his body, apparently without causing himself any significant pain. Harder than normal bone, they are usually used as melee weapons. Projectile spikes, burning spikes eventually. Following his time with the Morlocks, he was able to heat up the tips of the spikes to the point where they are almost flaming. Self-repairing exoskeleton, bone armor. He originally just grew a bunch of bone spikes over his body, then later created a self-repairing exoskeleton made out of spiked armor-plated bones that can defend against very powerful attacks like regular human bone couldn't defend against. The armor is very dinosaur-like in appearance. Wall crawling, because using the spikes it can crawl surfaces. Enhanced strength, twice the average human. Possible healing factor, because if he's producing all these spikes, is of course his skin eventually heal itself instantly. Weaknesses, mineral depletion. The removal of the bone spikes he produces rapidly depletes his body's calcium levels. He fixes this problem by drinking milk. His current weakness is his inability to control his powers. This is a fun fact. Iceman was initially was thought up to be put as the 8th X-Men member in the TV show, but instead they replaced him with Spike to make the cast more diverse, which is a very smart play there. And that's how you that's the proper way of be inclusive without making it like a whole big show of it kind of thing, and it's organic, hey, let's throw somebody who's like not lily white like everybody else, Kurt aside. And of course, we also get the introduction of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and highlight certain characters that isn't your typical Brotherhood bad guys. Like a couple of these guys we've seen from the 90s X-Men show, but they really haven't they play as super dim-witted. Here they're a little more fleshed out and has some agency and levels to them. Like the character Avalanche, who's pretty much like the punk bad boy kid at school, the delinquent, and he's able to control the earth, causing massive earthquakes. And I gotta tell you, I always thought it was, as a kid, I always thought it was kind of goofy looking, where he's just because he's a teenager, so it's you can clearly see it's causing some kind of strain, because he hasn't really fully mastered it or trained to manipulate the earth as well as he probably will in the future, but he's doing that thing. It's I call it the orgasm face. He does that orgasm face, and it looks corny, but I understand why. He's clearly straining to really putting some force behind it. Then we get Toad, who is kind of the joke kind of thug, the comedy relief of the thugs. And I gotta say, in terms of Toad as a character, I like this interpretation a whole lot more than any other interpretation I've seen. And we only seen him Toad 3 times. He'll show up here and there in the comics, but as far as in other forms of media, he showed up only 2 times in the 90s TV show, and he was such a nothing type of character, and not really fleshed out or put any kind of uniqueness to it. He wear this kind of gesture costume and use slime as materials. and talk with, the voice actor wasn't really giving his all, in my opinion, to make him like anything unique. He just talk like this, and that's all. It's like they didn't give him a try. But then we got the first X-Men movie with, Ray Park do make that character stand out a little bit, because he's not goofy or lame. Because if you look up Toad actually has like, some bit of hacking skills. He's not an idiot, as most interpretations like to portray him to be. He does have a hygiene problem, but I think that's kind of coincide with his mutant abilities. His tongue's very deadly. It is, because you can literally like crush a human being with that strength alone once it get it wrapped around you. So yeah, I mean, Toad's pretty decent. It's not like A class or anything like that, but he's not crap either if you play him right. Then eventually we get Quicksilver, and most interpretations of Quicksilver is usually pretty dope, but I think people most fondly remember him, well, before the MCU or even like the Fox film. This was people's favorite interpretation of Quicksilver, and the cocky attitude, the cocky delinquent attitude. But then we get Blob, who is, when we first introduced to him, he was kind of like he's like tossing trucks and like what do you call those things, those monster truck pull kind of stuff. He's tossing trucks around and he's clumsy, and everybody starts laughing. Like, stop laughing at me. So and he and Jean Grey, God bless her, she's like the heart of the team, and she's very empathetic, and it's like seeing people just like easily so tease him, and she's like, he just need a friend. And it's like, and like this is kind of like shows like, because high school was an absolute like horror show for a lot of kids that weren't popular. I mean, like, we all been there. Most of us have been there. If you weren't one of those popular jock, I won't say, doesn't even have to be jock, but just one of those kind of cool kids that everybody just instantly like. The outgoing type of people that gets invited to all these kind of parties or what have you. They make fun of him as big and fat, and there's a fair bit of fat jokes, but he's he's not an idiot, but he's just slightly bit of the slow side. But Jean, tries to befriend him. It's got very of Mice and Men vibes. If you ever read the book or watched the movie of Mice and Men, forgot who. I think the dumb one was Lenny. The dumb brother was Lenny. Well, the big dumb brother, that reminds me of Blob. Or at least this interpretation of Blob. He's like, it's definitely better than what we saw from Fred Dukes in X-Men Origins Wolverine. And Blob was, he took like that friendship way too far, and it's like eventually like trying to kidnap Jean to like, you're my friend now. And it's like, and it's like he's forcing her to be friends with him. Until eventually like, Wolverine and Cyclops and even Rogue has to come in to try to stop him from like crushing Jean to death with like a machinery. So yeah, in this interpretation we got Mystique, who is working for Magneto, who's for the most of the season is like behind the scenes, And like, man, it's like was so dope to like cool idea to have Magneto almost always in shadow. It's just like a red cloak and everything else is like shadowy. It's like showing like this dude can be anywhere if he wanted to. And we know his powers, but he just shows up just out of like a thick of nowhere, and like as like the angel of death almost. And we don't see his actual face until like the last two episodes of the two part of the season one. So it's very smartly played, because as a kid, we all know who this is, but he's just that looming threat. And it's like, yeah, that's how you need to play Magneto. He is very, very deadly. It's like practically, I say he's on par with Doctor Doom so far as like very deadly earthly threat. That, you know, because he's a alpha or no omega level mutant, because omega level means they can manipulate, you know, stuff on a worldwide scale if they can push it. And you got like Mystique, who is disguised as the keeping tabs on these kids under the guise of Principal Darkholme. Of course, going by her human given name, crap, what's her freaking first name? I'm about to say Raven Darkholme, but no, it's crap. That's Mystique's. Yeah, it is Raven Darkholme. It's like, yeah, it's like that can't be right? Because like, I'm thinking of, when I think of Raven, I think of the DC character. It's like, that ain't right. Yeah, it is Raven Darkholme. Then of course we get like Sabretooth in this, and Sabretooth is like, it's like a nice because clearly they based the appearance off of the first X-Men movie. Clearly it was thinking about it because like the movie was coming around the same time, so it's like perfect synergy here. But he actually speaks and has dimension rather than just snarls and growls like we hear in like the movie, where I think he only had like 4 lines out there in his entire appearance. I'm trying to remember. It's like, you owe me a scream, and then like they got to him first, or something like that. It's, and then like, of course, Charles speaking through his in mind control after the train station thing. Yeah, it's like at least 3 or 4 lines out of this entire appearance in the first X-Men movie. He didn't really say much. Here you have to see like a legit threat. And of course, like I said in my X-Men Origins Wolverine review, which you can check out, check out my, you know, like I will get back into the X-Men movies late next month, because I'm covering like a lot of Father's Day stuff right now, and then a few at least a couple of 2 4th of July stuff next month. And once I'm done with those, then I'll get right into back into like X-Men stuff with Logan and First Class and so on from there. Yeah, because you got like also Shadow Cat, which I just did like a comic book spoiler review with Shadow Cat, which you can check out on my channel as well. Yeah, like I cover like a good portion of solo stuff from, you know, significant members of the X-Men, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, Nightcrawler, Shadowcat more recently, Rogue, Gambit, which honestly has been my favorite one of the solo X-Men stuff that I've been covering before I get into the team-ups. Yeah. I think Rogue, Gambit, Cyclops and Wolverine has been my favorites. I think Shadowcat, surprisingly, I enjoyed more than I thought. Nightcrawler is pretty dope as well. I gotta revisit and see how like I rank them at the end of all this. Before I get into the X-Men events. But yeah, what else? Of course, like Wolverine, Storm, and Professor X are like they're not necessarily teachers, but like they're caretakers while they are rooming and boarding in the institute. And I think that was obviously a good call, because I don't know how many people be gravitate towards like a teenage Wolverine. Given his backstory, he's gonna be extremely too old. Because he's like near like 200 years old, because he was born in like the 1800s. So it make no sense to have him as like a teenager here. Storm was a very wise decision, considering that the character of Spike, she had to be like in her 30s, late 30s, something like that. And of course, because she has a bit of an African dialect here and there. But she, as much as I like the 90s X-Men Storm, I think it was wise to steer away from the whole power of lightning, come to my aid. It's like, as fun as that is, Storm doesn't need to do that. Just call the lightning. You don't have to make a grand thing about it. Like it's not an anime where they call out their attacks kind of situation. And I like where you get Professor X getting certain members to come along to meet up with Kitty Pryde. And like Kitty Pryde is a good example here. Well, Kitty Pryde and Rogue are good examples here of how when Charles detects a mutant with type of Cerebro, they bring like Scott, Jean, or Wolverine, or Storm along, depending on the power, not power dynamics, but like who's best suited to talk with particular people. Like, for example, Kitty thought like, I'll bring you along, Jean, because you're around her age, you can like see things in her point of view, to like see things at her level to make it easy. And you see how like you get some parents who's not like mutant haters of their own children. They're scared for it's like play very well, like they're scared for the kid, they don't know what to do, but they're trying their best like protect her, because they're mutants in this throughout this. I think it wasn't till maybe in the second season, like, because it's been a long time since I've seen X-Men Evolution, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be until like some point in the second season when like mutants are pretty much outed, in which X-Men always been speaking to demographics that like racism, bigotry of any kind of level, or even like people from LGBTQ plus community can understand this about like not wanting the world to see them because they don't feel like they're probably ready yet. And like I said, I don't think people give Charles Xavier a lot of credit, because he's doing the best he can given the situation. One broker peace between mutant kind and the humans, but he wants to do it cautiously, safely, as much as possible. Because doing it right out the gate and just in full force is jarring. I equate that to a lot of stuff in recent years, where it's like, yeah, progress is good, being accepting is good, letting people in these circles and at these tables is a good thing, but sometimes it's good to do it gradually. You know, you know, not necessarily in increments, but like there's levels. Like it took a while before people were starting to, all throughout like I'd say like the 90s into like the early 2000s, we had those kind of like smoking situations where people slowly start to stop with the whole cigarette smoking, even in terms like in the comics, because like characters like Wolverine and Ben Grimm, in the past, you see them in the comics smoking a cigar. Now, you rarely, if not ever, see in the comics them smoking anymore, unless you're going far back into like early 2000s and way back into the 90s and the 80s, where you see them smoking a lot. But it's just like a thing. It's like if they have to put out these PSAs and all these little things, like seeded here and there to subliminally, in a way, to get people to stop smoking because it's like not healthy. It causes cancer and all these other problems. That is, and like remember, like if you look up in history, if you don't know or watch old movies, they had like a sections for smokers and non-smokers, especially on planes. Now you barely even having that unless you go to those rich, fancy kind of like social clubs. Where you got like a smoking section. But yeah, that's the thing. If they try to force people all at once, like hey, like like getting in people's face physically, it's like hey, it causes cancer and blah blah blah, and like like harping on them, jumping down their neck instead of like like what I mean. It's like you don't try to force change all at once to make everybody perfect as possible and see things where you want all at once and making an enemy out of them. That's what it's like. I equate to what's going on with with certain things that the left does, where it's like, oh, you're not picture perfect right here now, and see things like hey, if you dare question how a certain member of the community do certain things, you're big and you're this and that. It's like no, that's how you do it. And it's like that's how I equate to what like Charles Xavier is doing here, where it's like, okay, we gotta do this slowly. We cannot jump the gun on this because people don't respond well to change all that well. You gotta gradually ease them into it. And that is the best way to cause progression. And some people like to make Charles Xavier in the comics like, oh, it's always a bad guy. There's certain decisions he's making. It's like, would you make those same decisions? Probably not. But as I said before, you're not in those kind of situations. I'm pretty sure there's certain decisions you probably made at one point or another where other people would disagree with you. But that was a choice you make, and you will choose to live with it, kind of situation. But it's the best option you are given at that time. You probably didn't even like it, but it stands to reason it was a better than the alternative at that moment. So I can't not call like Charles Xavier like an ass because he make a certain decision that the writers gave him. And like Rogue, she has like a pretty good like arc through this season where Mystique, of course, we've also learned through here, because I always thought it was in this TV show iteration that like I'm goofing because after like my favorite season of the 90s X-Men show, we learned that Nightcrawler is Mystique's child, and Rogue was like the adopted child. And they kind of play to that same beat again in this interpretation, but Rogue has not yet hip to that the idea that Mystique helped raised her, or actually is her daughter, because Um, yeah, I think like Mystique like adopted her at a certain point. I think that's has been the case. Uh, but uh, Mystique always saw Rogue as like her daughter because they never really bring up uh, Rogue's actual parents because I think in most cases the father at the finding out she was a mutant disowned her and kicked her out. But like you only see like in the first X-Men movie, you only see like a blip of Rogue's parents after the boyfriend Cody gets like put in a coma when Rogue's powers developed when right at the moment she was kissing him, and we never seen them ever again. But Mystique's clearly playing this girl for her own ends because she's working under Magneto. It wasn't until halfway through where Rogue realized that Mystique's been playing her this whole time. She still, on some level cared for Rogue, but was still Mystique has always been like a messed up kind of character. She never been like a full blown hero, but it's like at the most been an anti-hero, but she, placate to whoever means that fits her own ends. And more often than not, it's just wherever the services are for Magneto. But the X-Men tried to recruit Rogue, and of course Mystique kept messing with everybody because her ability to shapeshift. And it wasn't until like one of this kind of like a snowbound hiking trail where Cyclops and Rogue was on, and I love Goth Rogue because I love Goth chicks in general, but like Goth Rogue was amazing. That was like an amazing choice because clearly some have been watching The Craft when they was going through just probably this well, it was just The Craft. There's a lot of teen movie of the time that they're used as inspiration of making the show. But clearly, like, I look at this interpretation of Rogue, I think of Nancy Downs from The Craft. And I was like, spot on choice. That was like a spot on choice. And he still kept elements of the 90s Rogue because that's what people are super familiar with. So you get a nice little blend of that. But she agrees to be part of the X-Men because she still have a good heart, and she just get all mixed up because of Mystique. Like I mentioned about Spike and his like rivalry with Quicksilver, and Quicksilver like just delinquent. It's one of my favorite episodes that always stuck with me over the years. It's like is this episode and Survival of the Fittest as being like my favorite two episodes out of this entire season. And Spike has to, because of course, like he always into the X game stuff. It's the 2000s. It was like a lot of teenagers of that time were into like those X game stuff. So he had to stop Quicksilver, who's pretty much like robbing kids' lockers at super speed and causing like Spike to get blamed for it. And of course, he's like the teen angst in this is like, it's the right amount of teen angst. Sometimes, when you're writing a teenager, you kind of dial up the angst way too high, where at the point it's almost insufferable. But here in this show, it's played at the exact right level because they're teenagers. They don't always know stuff, but they're not idiots. And like when they find out that Professor was keeping the secret about like their principal was actually Mystique, the person that they were fighting throughout half of this season. And you didn't include the men because you didn't think they were mature enough already, but smartly written where they have like, yeah, professors, like, yeah, you're right. I should have trusted you guys with this information. We're like family. I should be able to come to you and let you know what was going on. But there's going to be times when I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to do better in the future. I'm going to try to include you guys more in these kind of things, but there's going to be moments where I'm going to have to like keep things from you if I deem like you're probably not going to be ready to hear it or whatever, which is a delicate dance with that when you're dealing with like children or even teenagers, even though teenagers are probably, well, I heard like certain therapists say like, like you don't want to keep too many things from your kid. Sure, they're your kid, but they're also still human beings that, you let them know and you tell them things at whatever grade level they in. That's how you explain it to them. When they're teenagers, you break it down for them, but don't treat them like they're stupid. You don't need to treat them like somewhat like, you don't need to treat them like adults, but it's like you break it down to them to a way where they understand it, and they will respect you all the more for it because they don't want teenagers don't want to be treated like dumb kids. Yeah, they're more observant than you give kids credit for. Because I'm pretty sure you all have seen things as children what your parents or other family members have done over the years that they did not think you were privy to or even consciously aware or even paying attention, but you were. And it affected you in some kind of manner. But my second favorite episode in the entire season is when, because the Brotherhood and the X-Men happen to be on the same hiking, camping trip, and because how rich is this school where you can just like have send these kids to some kind of hike trail or camping trip, whatever, but they on this like this drill sergeant type of like, who is this guy? It's like you normally would get like an expert hiker or something like that to run this kind of camping type of trip, but you give them like a drill sergeant. It's weird. So trying to teach them about teamwork and like survival skills. The X-Men group, because there's other kids, they have not been seen outside of these kids being dropped off at this camp. And so after a while, it's just the Brotherhood kids and the X-Men kids, and they're like they get very like, because they're trying to like, okay, we're not going to do this with our powers, so we're going to like beat you guys, and it's like this obviously animals, they're enemies. There is no like kind of mutual understanding between one another, and Gene thinking like Cyclops will be the more mature one out of everybody, but he's just like no, we gotta win. But this kind of like, because there's some good Cyclops stuff in here. It's like you rewatch this because people always downplay how good Cyclops is, and he's like an awesome character and like an awesome leader. He's a leader for a reason. Yes, sometimes he can be a stick in the mud, and you can easily say that about Batman or Captain America. They're leaders, and they have like a certain vibe about them that growing up, I guess we had that rebellious spirit. That's why we gravitated towards Wolverine over Cyclops. But I think we will respect Cyclops now, and of course, Cyclops in this interpretation is still a teenager, so he's not, he's just as susceptible to like, rivalry and teen angst as anybody else. He's just like, he's fall prey to that too every once in a while. Even though there's moments like when he's having out with Nightcrawler in one episode where they meet Forge for the first time, whereas like, they address like, Nightcrawler put in the face like, you gotta relax, man, like stop being a stick in the mud. And Cyclops like, you gotta sometimes gotta be serious, you can't be jokey all the time. And they learn from each other about like, Cyclops gotta loosen up and Nightcrawler gotta like, learn to take certain things serious sometimes, and everything's a joke. Here, Cyclops, is falling prey to like, because he does not like these guys. Because every which way they bully, they cheat, they do all this kind of stuff. Where Cyclops is kind of fed up sometimes. Where it's like he gets tired of being like the straight-laced guy. Is you would argue that it's the same way people like chastise like Superman sometimes, because he's always like the big blue Boy Scout. And you learn from Superman that yes, sometimes doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it is the right thing, and it doesn't always pan out, but deep down what you did was the just thing. And Cyclops had to learn that, like sometimes it is a pain in the ass to being like the straight laced, do the right thing all the time. Sometimes you falter, but like what the right thing is, and just because it's like the hardest, because like just because it's easy doesn't mean it's always right. So they challenge each other to make it to the top without using their powers. Of course, both leaders, Avalanche and Cyclops, cheat. I'm glad that it ain't just like, oh, it'll be so easy to have the writers like, okay, of course the brother is going to cheat and everything like that, but it's only Avalanche who's convincing the others, even though they're kind of like, like there's like a brief moment of hesitancy with the other brotherhood. It's like, oh, I thought he was gonna do his without powers, but okay. But then Cyclops, I'm glad it was smartly written. Like, no, like it shows levels to someone like Cyclops, so he fall prey to like this, like he's human. He like he gets jealous, he gets fed up, and he wants to win at all costs sometimes. So he gets like Nightcrawler to use his powers or Spike to use his powers to try to make it to the top to reach the flag. They have to collect. All the while, oh, this is my favorite part where like Jean is trying to be the mature one, and it's like once these guys agree to like do it without their powers, it's like good. Now I'm gonna be like like this level-headed one, and it's like about to learn about camaraderie, and it's like this is like a good thing I think it's a good place for both of them. I think you guys handle it as a great mature, and Cyclops just grabs her arm like, come on, Jean. That always gives me a laugh. That was so freaking funny, because she just like goes on and on about like the mature way of doing things. He's just like, Cyclops is like, come on, Jean. Like, shut up. But all while this happened, Mystique ends up breaking into this max prison that's keeping the Juggernaut contained. Professor X's stepbrother, who, like, in a lot of interpretations, King Marco isn't a mutant. He just got these powers from this, the gem of Sidorak, who's this kind of like otherworldly god that gives him his powers of the Juggernaut, being like an immovable Juggernaut. But here, it's because I never caught on to this until I rewatched it again after all these years, where like there's a line with Professor X saying like this mystical gem that gave him his powers also unlock a latent gene that King Marco has, where he has a mutant ability to be impervious, but that is further enhanced with like the Sidorak, and that kind of feeds into the last two-parter very well. it wasn't just like a gimmick to throw in the Juggernaut. There's a purpose to it. She tried to bring King Marco out in order to break into Xavier Institute to seek his revenge, but also so she can go in there and steal the specs from Cerebro, so she can bring it back to Magneto, so he can possibly use it to search out mutants easier than Charles and faster, and increase his manipulation of mutants to bring them into the fold of the Brotherhood. So eventually, when they Juggernaut breaks in, and despite all the X-Men's defenses, and despite Wolverine's attempts, Juggernaut breaks in, and in the results, smashes up like the Cerebro, because he doesn't care about anything, and this kind of upsets Mystique, and now he's planning on going after Mystique and Charles, but Storm is sent to go gather the Brotherhood and the X-Men, saying like, Charles and Xavier and Mystique are in trouble. They both need you. So it's like one of my favorite episodes of this season, where it's like so unique, because you rarely get this until like once we get to House of X and Powers of X comic review, which will wrap up all my X-Men level stuff, review stuff that I'm gonna be doing for a while, where it's like all these mutants who were fighting on opposite sides all team up, utilizing their powers in order to stop the Juggernaut, to keep him from reaching Magneto and Mystique. Whereas they let them know, like, you gotta lift the hatch, get this helmet off. So you see like Avalanche stopping his, making earthquakes to hold the Juggernaut, and you see like Kitty, Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Quicksilver all trying to get at a latch to unlock the thing, and he's getting tossed around. You see Cyclops barreling. This is not even the best Cyclops use of his powers. Wait till like the next seasons. But you see Cyclops like really like leaning into the optic blast to push the Juggernaut back. You see like the Blob like matching like strength against the this supposedly immovable Juggernaut, but of course he doesn't hold his own for long. But it's just awesome. It's like they all take a moment. Toad gets on there and and eventually lifts the latch off with his tongue, and then like then eventually Xavier uses psychic abilities to neutralize the Juggernaut, because it's like until that helmet comes off, it's very hard to stop the Juggernaut. But that was like an awesome display. But that was like a one-off thing. And Mystique eventually gets to her Brotherhood to get out of there. But that was an awesome episode. I love that. Was like a great scene. Always stuck with me. It was like one of few things out of this entire series that always stuck with me that I loved. That was a great stuff. But then you get the final two-parter where Cyclops' brother Havoc was discovered. He living with foster parents in Hawaii, and both brothers thought the other were dead after the whole plane crash thing, because that's how they got their mutant abilities developed after that point. But also as a result, Cyclops damaging his head caused like a situation with his brain where he won't be able to control his optic blast. So Magneto started making this play, having like almost like a Marvel versus Capcom type of fight. It's like making a fighting tournament, like random, like Street Fighter or something like that, and having like certain Brotherhood mutants fighting other certain members of the X-Men, and whoever comes out on top, he sends like a metal orb to collect them to bring them to the fold. Only the best will be in his Genosha asteroid M thing he got going on. uh, and he thanks to like the Sidorak thing where it kind of enhances King Marco. He utilizes this machine where it's like anybody who steps in, their powers are greatly enhanced to their full capabilities and in their control. He eventually gets Havoc and Cyclops, and despite trying to warn Cyclops because he only's doing it for his brother, but it was too late. Charles couldn't get to Cyclops in time before the door shuts behind them, and they're enhanced, and it alters their mind a bit. Where now it's like they're big, beefy dudes with full control of their abilities, kind of like a shortcut in a way. But a fight ensues between Mystique and Magneto because he's lost against Storm, it's like, what do you think Mystique gonna do head on against somebody like Storm? Yeah, she has shape-shifting abilities, but it also doesn't mean, because she can change into Magneto, but she doesn't have Magneto's powers. But I imagine getting into the machine, because when she accidentally is thrown into the machine, she steps out and she kind of looks like what Mystique does in the first X-Men, the first three X-Men films. Just kind of looks like that. But once the machine is destroyed, anybody who stepped in reverts back to their original state. But now that Cyclops has his brother back, they all escape from Asteroid M, and Magneto's machinations is finally stopped. Oh, also, I didn't even bring up about Wolverine. Wolverine looks great in this. Now, I still like the blue and yellow costume more so than any other costume, personally. But, other interpretations of Wolverine's costume are still cool looking. This origin black thing he got going on is really dope. And we get a little bit of his origin with what's his name, Cornelius or Kilbrew or something like that gave him his adamantium claws and messed with his mind. We get a little bit of that in here, and thanks to Kitty and Nightcrawler, we're able to help Wolverine and get him out of that sticky situation. So that was pretty dope. Of course, this is a kids show. They can't really utilize Wolverine cutting up people, but we still see him call stuff up. But I guess in some situations, it's insinuated that he's cutting into certain people, like Sabretooth, for example. But Sabretooth, he heals just as well as Wolverine does, so it's not a big whoop. But yeah, I mean, that's season 1 of X-Men Evolution. It's just it's like, just getting to know the characters that you'll be following along with. That number of X-Men characters will increase in the later seasons. I think season 2, you were introduced to Boom Boom and Sunspot, and I think Iceman does eventually show up. I'm not sure on that part. But yeah, the roster eventually will start picking back up. So the voice acting, by the way, is incredible. I love the animation here is phenomenal as well. Of course, there's certain things that you're familiar with certain characters, like Nightcrawler being very religious. That's not very lean into in this interpretation, but being he doesn't mean to, but he's he has this fair share of ex-girlfriends and stuff like that. So they kind of mess with that a little bit, with him being trying to hit on the girls, everybody loves the fuzzy dude, just that attitude. And he's such a try-hard too. And it's it's kind of funny. But anyway, yeah, it's a great first season. Nice introduction to everybody that you'll be following along with. Of course, I remember the last season is only 4 seasons, but the last season is going to be 9 episodes. I didn't even realize it was that small. But I guess, you know, they was on, they about to get, you know, I won't say canceled, but, you know, I guess something where they're not gonna be funny anymore. So it's like, okay, you're gonna have to wrap up soon, kind of thing. Because this was on 4Kids, so Kids WB at a time. So yeah, surprisingly, but hopefully the last season goes off better. If once I rewatch it, it hopefully goes off better than what happened in the last season of the 90s X-Men show, the season 5 of that, because it really wasn't like the best. But you know, it's about funding, and once you ain't getting like the money, you do what you can with what you got. Anyway, I will see you guys maybe not tonight, because I normally just do one stream, because the way my work schedule is right now, I won't be able to do much. So tomorrow I'll get back to Street Fighter 6, and then next day Destiny 2. I'll have a new Indiana Jones movie review coming for Thursday evening. Chaotic lore video, that's gonna be like a little, you're gonna give me some grace on that, because I got a lot of stuff going on personally wise that kind of like gotta put certain things on hold, at least a smidge. Chaotic lore video will be coming as soon as I can get everything straightened out. I'm working on it, but that's probably gonna take maybe like a extra week. Especially how the just like with Maxor, KO is going to be a fair bit of a chunky. It's like 25 minutes worth most likely, like Maxor was. So yeah, and then of course my next X-Men solo comic that I will be covering will be Mystique. So that'll probably be later on in this weekend, but. I'll have some decent time off next week, so I'll have like some plethora of stuff, you know, trying to, you know, really like fill in some stuff for the content. Oh, and also FF16, I will once again I will be covering that this Friday evening. I'm not going to pre-order it because none of the pre-orders really kind of appeal to me, but I'll get it Friday for the PS5 and then start playing that. It looks pretty dope, but it's very Game of Thronesy from what I'm seeing from the demo. And the main character and his brother, their parents are cousins. So yeah, very Game of Thronesy and very gross. But look forward to that. More Destiny 2, Chaotic Lore videos, Street Fighter 6. Which hopefully I don't know, not sure how long that, you know, world tour is. I'm trying to like get as much done as I can with that so I can get to like some online play. But anyway, I'll see you all tomorrow, Street Fighter 6, and try to hopefully get as much done as I can, because normally I do not want to get bogged down with too many things at once when I'm but the way my work schedule is kind of make things kind of tight and more spread thin as it is. But anyway, I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care. Have a good night. And leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of X-Men Evolution as a whole, which is your favorite character, what you think of the show. It's on Disney Plus if you have it, so you can check it out. And yeah, I'll see you all soon. Take care.